be showing you how you can make your very own watercolor paintings using your Cricut machine and Cricut's watercolor markers. And the best part is you don't need to be a painter at all to do this project. If you're new here, my name is Nisha. Welcome to Little Craft Mess, and I hope to inspire you on your crafting journey. For today's project, you'll need a Cricut cutting machine, Cricut's watercolor markers, and their watercolor cards. We are going to be using the card mat, and I've also picked up some watercolor paper that we will be using as well. Today I am using the Cricut Maker for this project, but you can also use one of the Explorer machines or even the Cricut Joy, which does have its own set of markers for this. This is also a great project to get your kids involved with. Do you remember those paint with water books where the dye is already on the pages and all you need is a wet paintbrush to color in that book? So that's kind of what we're doing today. However, you're not stuck with the images in a coloring book. You can choose whatever design you want from Cricut Design Space or millions of images all across the internet. So let's head on to Cricut Design Space and choose our designs. The easiest way to choose a design for your watercolor projects is either to select one of Cricut's pre-made projects or images. So let's search their images, and we're going to type in watercolor, and let's look for a Christmas image. So watercolor Christmas. And you'll see a whole pile of designs here. Let's grab this free one right here. So even if you don't have a Cricut Access account, you can still do this image. I'm also going to select another design that I've uploaded. So I'm going to go over to upload. And this time I'm going to use a Valentine's image. So I'm going to grab this one here, I Adore You. And we're going to add to canvas. I got this design from Design Bundles, and I'll leave this one linked down below in the description if you're interested in it. Let's go ahead and grab one more image. I have uploaded piles of unicorns because I have two girls and they just love them. So let's search unicorns. And one thing you want to keep in mind when you're selecting your watercolor images is how many lines are overlapping each other. So for example, if you were to do this one here, you can see how all the colors are touching each other. And maybe you want that, maybe you want to bleed colors. But if you don't, a better option would be to pick a design like this, where there's spaces in between each color layer. It's going to make it much easier for you to use your watercolor markers. I'm going to select this one over here and add this one to the canvas. And then we're going to view our canvas. All right, so now we have three different images, and I actually want to do the unicorn on some watercolor paper. I'm not going to make a card out of this one, but I do want to place these two images on cards, and we'll make a Christmas card and a Valentine's Day card. So for now, I'm going to hide this image and we will deal with this one later. So this design here is one of Cricut's set watercolor images, and you'll notice it has a background on it. So these pen lines on here are going to be the watercolor markers that we put on our design. And there's a back beige outline here. That would be the cut file. So right now this design is set up to draw our image, and then it would cut around the outside of this wreath. But I want this image on a card. I don't want it cut out as a circle. So we're going to go down to the bottom right hand corner and we're going to detach this image. And then I'm going to select that background layer, and I'm just going to hide that. You can delete it if you want. I'm just going to press the I to hide that layer. And then I'm going to select all these layers again, and I'm going to attach those back together so that they're not separated. Now this image over here, if we go up to operation, you'll notice it's a basic cut. We don't have the pen selected for this. Whereas if we click on our wreath, under operation, it says pen, and that's already set up to use our watercolor markers. So we're going to have to make some adjustments to the I Adore You. So let's go up to the top right hand, and we're going to ungroup this image because it's all grouped together right now. So one thing you could do is select the entire image here and go up to operation and change that to pen, and then click on the little color box, select marker. And then if we scroll all the way down to the bottom, you will see our watercolor colors that are available in our watercolor pack. So you can make this all one color and select purple, and it'll show you how our machine will draw this image out. However, if you don't want the whole entire thing to be purple, we're going to have to change some colors, and we'll have to do that one at a time. So I'm going to select the eye here, and we can change the color of that. So we're going to scroll down, and maybe I want that to be red. And then the word U here, it's all separated, so you're going to have to do one letter at a time. So let's make that one red as well. And you're just going to go click on each layer of your image and change the color to what you want it to be. Once you're happy with all the colors of all your layers, you can select all those layers, and we can go down to the bottom right and click on attach. Now I want to make sure we have sized these images correctly. So I'm going to go over to shapes, and we're going to select a square. And I am using the Cricut Watercolor R40 cards, and the size of those are 4.75. And we're going to unlock the top here, and the height is 6.6. So this is the size of the card. So I'm going to go up to operation and change this to guide. So now we have a guide layer here. I'm going to remove these grid lines so you can see a little better. And you'll notice that our drawing here is too big. So I'm going to send my guide layer to the back. So arrange, send to back. And then I'm going to select my wreath here, and I'm just going to shrink this down a little bit so that it fits nicely in the card. Now I'm going to use the same guide layer over here. And actually it looks like the I Adore You is about the perfect size, but I can actually make it just a little bigger. So I'm going to do that. And that looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and make these cards. And then afterwards, we'll do the unicorn on some watercolor paper. So let's press Make It. And we're going to select On Card Mat and press Confirm. Now, Cricut does a pretty good job of lining up the images on the card mat, but if you don't like where it is, maybe you want the I Adore You to be moved up just a little bit, so you can scooch that up. And when you're happy with the placement of everything, you can go ahead and press Continue. We're going to go over to Browse All Materials, and we're going to type in Watercolor. And you'll see we have the watercolor cards right there, so we can go ahead and select watercolor cards as our base material and click on Done. And we have a few instructions here. We're going to be loading our purple watercolor marker first. So let's go load our mats and get our images drawn out. So we're going to remove the liner here of our card mat. And then we're going to grab our watercolor cards, and we are going to stick them inside the card mat. So we're going to lift up the side here, and then you're just going to tuck it right in there. And make sure you are getting your card lined up well. So you want this seam to be touching right up to the side. You want to push it right in there so that sticky line is right on the fold line. So you want to push it all the way this way, and you want to make sure it's pushed all the way up as well. So once you feel you have it in there, you can go ahead and shut your card. And if your mat doesn't seem too sticky, you can always grab a brayer and try to smooth your card on as well. And then we're going to do the same with the other card. We're going to lift up that flap. Sometimes you need your nails to grab it, and just stick it under there and push it through. Now, before we slide our mat in, we want to move our star wheels. Right now, if I left the star wheel right here, it would be going through my watercolor markers, and it will probably smudge the markers. So we're going to move the star wheels right in the middle. So I've got two in the middle, and then the other ones are on the outside. Then we're going to grab our purple watercolor marker, and we're going to open up clamp A, and we're going to pop that right in there until it clicks, and then shut it. And then we can go ahead and press our flashing button. And design space will prompt us when we need to switch out the marker to the next color. Now let's go ahead and do our unicorn. So I'm going to select all my images here. I'm just going to group them together and hide them. And let's grab that unicorn. So once again, this is set to a basic cut. So we need to go under operation and change everything to pen. And then we're going to click on that color swatch, change it to marker, and then we can select our colors. Now, I don't want this whole thing to be blue, so I'm going to ungroup this image, and then I'm going to select each layer, and I'm going to change the color. So for the horn, we're going to scroll to the bottom, and we're going to change that to yellow. And then just go through all the layers like we've done before, and change the color to what you want it to be. And once you're happy with the colors you've chosen, you can select everything, and we're going to click on attach. Now this time I'm not putting this image on a watercolor card. I am using watercolor paper, and the size of my paper is 9 by 12. So I'm going to quickly make a little template like we did before. So I'm going to grab that square shape. I'm going to unlock my box, and we're going to change the width to 9 and the height to 12. And I'm going to make this a guide layer. And because this is so big, I'm going to go down to the bottom left-hand corner on my screen, and we're just going to zoom out. And then I can place my image on top, and we can size it to the size that we want. Now, one more fun thing we can do is add a name to the bottom of this. So let's go over to text, and I'm going to type out the name Emma, and let's change the font as well. I'm going to use the font Smoothie Shop, and then we need to change the operation again over to pen. We're going to select marker, and then change it to the color you want to change it to. So let's do green. Now, if you zoom in, you will notice our letters overlapping each other. If you don't want those pen marks overlapping each other, you can go over to combine and then click on unite, and then you're not going to have those extra pen marks there. Now, oftentimes we don't like it when we have bubble letters because they're not filled in, but because we're doing watercolor, this is just such a great function, and it's going to be so much fun to fill in text using our watercolor markers. So we can go ahead and center the name with our unicorn. So I'm going to select the name and our unicorn. We're going to go up to the top, align, and center. And then I'm going to go over to the bottom right-hand corner and click on attach. And then we can go ahead and click on make it and load our mat and get our Cricut to draw out this image. This would also be such a fun project to do for a birthday party. If you had your Cricut machine draw out a whole pile of images with kids' names on them, and then they can go ahead and use a watercolor brush, or they could probably even use paint brushes to color in the design. Let's click on continue. And again, we're going browse material, type in watercolor, and this time I'm using heavy watercolor paper, so I'm going to select that and click on done, and let our machine start to draw. Now this time I'm going to move my star wheels over to the side so that they're not going to go through my drawing. So here are our cards, and they turned out great. So to take them off the mat, we're just going to flip it over and gently pull the card back off the mat, and then just pull it out. And then we'll do the same for the other one. We'll gently pull the mat off the card and then pull it out. And then here is our unicorn. I forgot to center this on the screen, so it's a little off center, but I can just cut that edge off. And another thing I noticed, and I don't know why this happened, but my marker did miss the top of this rose here in the middle. So what I can do is grab my marker and freehand that in, or I can just use the marker color here to paint in the image. So the next piece is a fun piece. We are going to take this paintbrush and we're going to unscrew it and fill it up with water. And we're going to have some fun filling in these cards. Now before we get started, I've used my watercolor markers to draw out a line on this blank piece of paper, and we're just going to practice a little bit before we begin on these cards. So I have water in here, and we're just going to give it a gentle squeeze to get that water flowing. And then we can practice by coloring these lines. So we can do it on the side, we can try that. And the more times we go over the same color, you can see that line blurring and then our color is getting darker. Or if you wanted to, you can use the very tip of your marker and create thinner lines. Or if you stick closely to the line here, you can see how we're creating a thicker line and it's quite a bit darker than what we did over here. So you can play around and experiment with your colors before you begin working on your cards. You will also want to have some paper towel nearby. Before we go on to our next color, we need to clean our brush. So I'm just going to dab it gently on the paper towel until there's no marker remaining and it's nice and clean again. And then we can practice with the next color. Another thing you can test out is putting two colors really close together. So I'm going to make a nice thick green line here. And then I'm going to put a blue one right here. And then we can blend these colors together. And you'll also notice as you get further away from your pen mark, the lighter the paint will be. You could also do some freehand drawings with your markers and then create an image that way without even using your Cricut machine. So play around with it and have some fun. I'm actually curious in how these markers will work with actual paintbrushes. So I filled up some water here and I'm going to just quickly draw a little snowman. So my freehand drawing's not the greatest, but let's see what happens when I use a real paintbrush and water and color this in. So I didn't take my time doing this, I just did it really quickly, and normal paintbrush and water does seem to work as well. So let's get to those cards. So I'm going to start with this card here. I'm going to be using this paintbrush because you're going to be able to get into those lines really nicely without going outside of the lines. However, there's different techniques. Maybe you want to paint the outside instead of the inside. Right now, I'm just pulling the color from the outside of the line and bringing it inside the letter. I really like the control that this little water paintbrush gives you. You can work with the tip of it or the side of it, and it really helps the process go smoothly. And I find you have better control with this than you would a paintbrush. However, if you wanted to maybe do a background, you want to make a sunset with some watercolors, you could definitely draw some lines and use a full out paintbrush to do a background using that technique. So for example, if I were to draw some sort of yellow zigzag here, I could go ahead and take a paintbrush and we can do a bit of a background yellow color here. And we're just adding a little more dimension to our card. And instead of coloring inside the lines, we are going outside. So we could also do that with our letters here. Maybe we want the inside of our letter to stay white. We can grab the watercolor marker color and just pull it to the outside instead of pulling it to the inside. And then we'll kind of get a bit of a glowing effect here. Another thing you can do while you're painting is experiment with the amount of water you're using. So your brush can be pretty dry, or you can squeeze it to get more water out, and you're going to get different effects on your painting that way. Here I'm using quite a bit of water and I'm just pulling the colors around inside the ear here. So here are our finished watercolor cards. We got our Christmas one and a Valentine's one, and they turned out really cute. And here is our painting. Not perfect, I could work on my technique a little bit, but these are just so much fun to do. It's a nice relaxing craft to make, and these are such nice cards to be able to give as gifts. I hope you enjoyed today's project. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more Cricut tutorials, and I hope to see you on more crafting adventures.